Hi students, hope you are all fine. Okay, so let's start today's lecture. So in today's video, we are going to learn the branch control instructions of 8085. In branch control instructions, you cause a change in the flow of program. Okay, so program is always executed in a sequential manner, but after every instruction, PC gets incremented. Okay. So PC, I'm sure you remember what is PC. PC means program counter. What does PC gives? It always gives you the address of the next instruction. Okay. So PC gets incremented. Program goes in a sequential manner. Now, if you want to call a branch, you need to change the value of PC. So this whole video is about changing PC. So if you don't interfere with PC, by default it goes on incrementing and we go in a sequential manner. So branch control instruction means changing the value of PC. Now, what are the instructions that we are going to cover in branch control instructions? Okay. So the first instruction we are going to cover is jump address, any address. Okay, any 16-bit address. Okay. Okay, now see here, we are in a memory location 1000 each. Clear? Now, under normal circumstances, what will happen? We will go to the next memory location 1001. Okay, and so on. But for some reasons, okay, you have to jump directly to memory location 2000. From 1000, you have to jump directly to memory location 2000 for some reasons. Okay, so in that case, you have to write jump JMP 2000H. 2000 is a 16-bit address. So the first instruction that I will be teaching you is the whole working of this jump instruction. Okay, how does this instruction works? This jump is an unconditional jump. Okay, means you have to jump without any condition. There is no condition for any jump. Okay, but there are some conditional jumps also. They are JC, jump if carry, JNC, jump if no carry, JZ, jump if 0, JNZ, jump if not 0, JPE, jump if parity even, JPO, the jump if parity odd, JP, jump if plus, and JM, jump if minus. So all these are conditional jumps instructions. What will they check? They will check the flags. Suppose these two will check the carry flags, these two will check the 0 flags. Then these two JP and JPO, they should check the parity flag, and JP and JM, they will check the sign flag. Okay, so these are all conditional jumps. So so that is you just to need. So some are very important from programming point of view, but some are there. Okay, that you have to not know that they exist. Okay, you don't have to know in details. But especially the first four, jump if carry, jump if no carry, jump if 0, and jump if no 0, they are very important from programming point of view. Okay. So any add subtract program, you need to check the carry flag. Okay, so you need the jump if carry and jump if no carry, and jump if 0 and jump if not 0 are useful in looping. Okay, are useful in looping. So all these examples I am going to teach you. I am going to teach you examples of JZ and JNZ and creating loops. Okay, I will be giving you two or three examples so that you can understand better. Then you come to the big instruction called call. Okay, so and timing diagram call has the highest biggest timing, and call has the biggest timing diagram in 8085. So first I will be teaching you the instructions. What is the difference between? Then I will be teaching you the difference between jump and call. Okay, jump and call. What is the difference between jump and call? Okay, a call instruction is always accompanied with a return instruction. Okay, so I will be teaching you both. The way to go to a subroutine, okay, the way to go to a subroutine by using call instruction, and the way to come to the main program by using the return instruction. I will teach you both. Okay, and again these are call and return are the conditional jumps. Again the shortcut to do is call. There is a shorter version of call called RSTN. Okay, and this RSTN, these are software interrupts of 8085. So there are 8 RSTN instruction, RST0 to RST8. So we will be covering that. Okay, now let's start our first instruction. We begin with our first instruction, that is the jump instruction. Okay, that is the jump instruction. Clear? Okay. Now understand the jump instruction very clearly, because if you understand the jump instruction very clearly, okay, you can understand the other jump instructions also. This is an unconditional jump, there are conditional jump. So if you understand this jump instruction, you can understand those very clearly. So basically it lays the platform for other jump instructions. Okay, now when you write jump instruction, okay, that is JMP, okay, you next to it you write a location. Okay, so how do you want to jump? Suppose you have written jump 2000. Okay, so in paper you write an address, but in practical you write a label. In paper you write an address, but in practical you write a label. If you want to access this location, you write a label next to it. Okay, suppose if I write jump up or jump back, you can use any name. Okay, jump down, okay, you can use any name. So so if you want to access this location, you write a label next to the instruction like these names. Okay, so that you want, that is the code name becomes a label. So you write jump with that label. When the assembler sees the label, when the assembler will see the label, okay, that is the name. When the assembler will see the names, the assembler substitute these names with the address. Okay, these names with the address. So in reality there should be an address over here. Understood? There should be an address over here. So if the programmer, you as a programmer knows the address, he or she can put it. Okay, otherwise you can put the label. Understood? So the assembler will substitute the label with the address. So when I write jump 2000, this point will become more and more clear as we proceed. Okay, so jump 2008. Okay, so what does this mean? So here my intention is to go to memory location 2000. Jump 2000 means my intention is to go to memory location 2000. Are you clear? Now programmer, okay, now program was going in a sequential manner. This was your program, it was going in a sequential manner. Now here you see, so here now microprocessor has reached here. Okay, now here the program counter is 1008. So as soon as the instruction in this memory location, I began the instruction jump 2008. So as soon as the instruction jump 2008 will be fetched, okay, program counter will be incremented to 1001H. Okay, assuming that the program is going in a sequential manner. But after fetching, what comes next? After fetching, it comes decoding. Okay, after fetching, it comes decoding. So after decoding, what comes? Execution. So when jump 2008 will be executed, okay, microprocessor sees that you have written a jump, because it will decode this instruction. Okay, it will decode the instruction. So as soon as it will decode the instruction and it will execute it, okay, then it will understand that you have written jump. So that means your intention is no longer to go in a sequential manner. Okay, what is your intention? You want to go to somewhere else. You have given the address 2008. Okay, so what you want that my next instruction should be fetched from memory location 2008. Who gives you the next instruction? The program counter. Okay, so the program counter gives you the address of the next instruction. That means after execution of this instruction, your program counter will be loaded in memory location. Your 2008 will be loaded in program counter. Understood the whole process? So again I am repeating. This was your program. Suppose you are writing a program, okay? At this memory location, when the program has reached at this memory location 1000H, at this memory location it sees the instruction jump 2000H, okay? So after that the program counter is incremented to 1001H, okay? But as soon as the program this instruction is fetched, okay, then what the processor will do, the processor will decode and then it will execute. So after it gets executed, the processor will understand that your intention is no longer to go in a sequential manner. What you want to go to memory location 2000H. That means you want that your next instruction should be fetched from memory location 2000H. Okay. So who gives you the address of the next address of the next instruction? The program counter. So whatever data was loaded in program counter 1001H, that will be overwritten by 2000H. So 2000H will be put to PC. Okay. So instruction is over. Now PC has become 2000H. Okay. So your next instruction will be automatically fetched from 2000H. That means the program has taken a jump to this memory location. I hope it is clear. Okay, so that was your jump instruction. So if you write jump 8000H, okay, that means program counter will become 8000, will get 8000H. Okay, so if you write jump 4000H, okay, your program counter will get 4000H. Okay, so and so forth. Now, so the basic idea of this instruction is over, but we will be exploring this instruction, jump instruction, a little more. Okay, because if you need to understand call, okay, you need to dig and understand properly jump. Now, jump 2000 H. Okay, do you understand how to read the size of the instruction? I have done this many times in the previous videos. So this is a 3 byte instruction. Okay, so tell me how this is 3 byte. Jump 2000. This is an assembly language. When this instruction is converted into machine language, there will be an opcode for this instruction, right? Will there be an opcode for jump or jump 2000? Exactly, jump, because a number can never be a part of your opcode. So 2000 is an operand and jump will get an opcode. Jump will get an opcode and 2000H will be your operand. Fine. So all opcodes are of 1 byte. This is 1 byte and 20H. This will be 1 byte and 00H. This will be 1 byte. Okay. So all together 1 byte. So all together this will make a 3 byte instruction. Okay. So since this is a 3 byte instruction, it will be written in 3 memory locations, because one memory location has 1 byte. I hope you know this. Okay, so one memory location carries only 1 byte. So at 1000H, our instruction was written as in 1000H. So in 1000H, what we will get? We will get the opcode of jump, right? In 1001H, what will be stored? 1001H, 00H. In 1002H, what will be stored? 20H. Higher byte, higher address, lower byte, lower address. Simple rule. Okay. So this 2000H will be written in this way. So this is how your instruction will look like when it is in the memory. This is how your instruction will look like in the memory. So in paper it was jump. In paper what you have written? In jump 2000H. Okay. But it will be looking like this when you write, when this is the this memory will get stored in the, when this instruction will get stored in the memory. This will look like this. In 1000H it will get the opcode of the jump. In 1001H it will get the 00H. In 1002H it will be stored as 20H. Okay, so this is the full instruction. Okay, whatever the next instruction, it will be at memory location 1003. Okay, what will be the next instruction? It will be at 1003. Are you clear up to this? Okay, are you? Okay, now have you understood? Okay, so when microprocessor begins this instruction, okay, what is the microprocessor will first do? The microprocessor will first fetch this instruction, okay, from the memory location. Now, jump, which fetch instruction jump and will decode it, okay. This is the opcode fetch cycle. So you know all this. So on decoding, it will understand that this is the jump. By seeing the opcode, by seeing the pattern of 1 and 0, it will understand that this is the jump instruction. Now, since this is a jump instruction, microprocessor knows that it is a 3-byte instruction. Okay, so there are 2 more bytes are remaining. 2 more bytes are remaining. So the moment jump was fetched, okay, the PC was incremented to PC plus 1. That is 1000 has become 1001. As soon as jump was fetched, the program counter was incremented by 1. Okay, so PC gets 1001. Okay, so the microprocessor will fetch. Then what the microprocessor will fetch? Then 00. Okay, so 00 will be stored in this 00 will be stored in Z register. Okay, and then as soon as 00 was fetched, the program counter will again be incremented by 1, so it will go to 1002. Okay, and microprocessor will fetch this 20H. Okay, and it will put in W register. So at that point, when 20 was fetched, so microprocessor was as program counter was 1003. So what is over? What is over after these 3 instructions? What is over? Fetching is over. Okay, not execution. So during fetching and decoding is done, and that is during the first byte, that is opcode. Fetching and decoding is done in the when the first byte was fetched. Okay, so when fetching and decoding is over, but execution is not over. So between fetching and decode execution, program counter is 1003. Here the instruction is fetched, okay, and decoded, but it is not executed. Okay, so during this fetching and decoding, okay, and execution, program counter is 1003. Okay, so till now the instruction has been fetched. The number 2000 has come inside the microprocessor and is temporarily stored in. So 2008 is temporarily stored in WZ register pair. Okay, so are you clear up to this? So now microprocessor sees this is a jump instruction. Jump means that program counter has to get a new value. It has to get a new value. The microprocessor knows that since this is a jump instruction, because it is fetched and decoded. So now since the microprocessor knows that yes, this is a jump instruction, so the program counter has to get a new value. That means the program will not go to in a sequential manner now. It has to jump to some other memory location. Okay, so program counter has to get a new value. So microprocessor will put the new value into PC from WZ register. Okay, so this is the execution of the instruction. Understood? So program counter will now get 2008 from W, which was stored in WZ register. So because of this now the instruction is over. Now PC, which was 1003, program, if the PC was 1003, program would have gone in a sequential manner. But when the execution is completed, program counter is now stored with 2008. So between fetching and decoding, program counter was 1003. After between fetching and execution, program counter was 1003. After this instruction is executed, okay, program counter has got a new value, that is 2008, because after fetching, the microprocessor understood that yes, this is a jump instruction. The program counter has to get a new value, so program counter will be written with the number that is temporarily stored in WZ register. That is, program counter will be now 2008. So between fetching and execution, program counter was momentarily loaded with data. Memory location 1008. During execution, the WZ register will put the new number into PC. Okay, that is how the next instruction will be fetched from. So the next instruction. So after here the program after jump 2008. Okay, the next instruction will be fetched from. The next instruction will be fetched from 2008, not from 1003 because this is a jump instruction. So this is how the whole instruction execution takes place. The execution of the instruction takes place. So I hope this is clear. Okay, now jump was unconditional jump. Okay, it didn't have this condition. Once you see that he has jumped to 2000H, it will directly go to 2000H. There is no condition. Okay, but there are several instructions which will jump on conditions. Okay, like JC 2000H, JC 2000H, that is jump to memory location 2000H depending on options, that is true or false. If the condition is true, jump if carry means jump, it will check the carry flag, that is if carry flag is 1, okay, the condition is true, that means the program counter will get a new value 2000H and it will go to memory location and it will take a jump to memory location 2000H. You know how the program counter gets a new value in jump, like I have explained in jump 2000H. Okay, so if the condition is true, that is if carry flag is set, then only it will take a jump to the processor will take a jump to memory location 2000H. But if carry flag is 0, this condition becomes false. That is, if condition is true, if carry flag is 1, then only it will take the program counter will take the new value 2000H, and if the condition is false, that is if carry flag is 0 in case of this instruction, okay, then the program counter will be sequentially executed. Okay, it will not take a jump. So if this instructions words on condition. Okay, if the condition is true, it will take a jump. If the condition is false, it will not take a jump. Okay. Likewise, jump if no carry, that is it will also check the carry flag. Okay, it will jump only if the carry flag is 0. It will jump only if the carry flag is 0. Okay, so like this there are several jump instructions. So let us take a look. Jump if carry. Okay, it will take a jump only if the carry flag is set. Jump if no carry. It will take a jump only if the carry flag is 0. Okay. Then jump if 0. It will check the 0 flag. Okay. If the 0 flag is 1, then only it will take a jump. JNZ. That is jump if no 0. That means if the carry flag is 0, then only it will take a jump. Fine. Then JPE. Jump if parity flag is even. That is if parity flag is 1, then only it will take a jump. Jump if parity odd. That is if the parity flag is 0, then only it will take a jump. Clear? Then jump if minus. It will check the sign flag. That is if sign flag is 1, that is if result is negative. Okay, that is if result is negative, then only it will take a jump. Jump if plus. That is it will take the sign, it will again check the sign flag. That is the sign flag is 0, it will take a jump. That means if the answer is positive, then only it will take a jump. So these 4 instructions, jump if carry, jump if no carry, jump if 0 and jump if not 0, these are used a lot. Okay, but this JP, JPO, JM and JP, okay, these are very rarely used. Clear? Okay, now example of jump if 0 and jump if not 0, that is JZ and JNZ. Okay, examples of this instruction is looping. Okay, that is the next thing I am going to explain, how to create a loop. Okay, how to create a loop. Now all big programs or small programs are put in a loop. Okay, clear? A program to transfer 1 kilobyte or 100 kilobyte or megabyte is the same as the program to transfer 1 byte. Okay, is the same as the program to transfer 1 byte. Okay, what you have to do, once you transfer 1 byte, put the procedure in a loop and you will transfer the whole block. Fine. Next, you can take, if you want to write a program to add a series of numbers, is same as the program to add one number. Add one number to your grand total. Okay, put it in a loop, and you go on adding, and a series of numbers, and so on. So basically, all these programs are actually small programs. Okay, you need to know, if you put the small programs in the loop, it becomes big programs. So what I am trying to say is, if you want to do serious programming, you need to know how to create a loop. Okay, how to make a loop has nothing to do what is going inside the loop. Okay, so here I will be teaching you how to create a loop. Okay, first you are making an infinite loop. Okay, they are also useful. Now suppose this is a program, this is your program. Okay, now this is the section you want to execute. This is the section you want to execute again and again. Okay, now you are putting here a label back. You are putting here a label back. Okay, you can put any label by any name. I have given the name back. Now here you want to go back. Here you want to go back. Fine. Now the jump back, this is an assembly language. Okay, so when the assembler converts this assembly language into machine language, for jump there will be an opcode. For jump there will be an opcode, right? There will be an opcode. For back there will be an address, right? For back there will be an address. The assembler knows what is this address. It will substitute the address. Okay, it will substitute that address. So if you are entering the program yourself in the memory, you know the address. Okay, you won't be writing back while you are entering the program in the kit. Okay, you will be actually writing the address. So if you know the address is 2000, okay, so you will be writing jump 2008 in the while you are entering the program in a kit. Okay, but on paper you will be writing the same with the label. Here I given the name back. The label I given the name back. This is basically a memory location. I given the memory location a name back. So on paper you are writing back, but while you are entering the program in a kit, you are entering the number. You know the address where you want to go back. So in paper you are writing back. In paper you are writing the name of the address, but when you are entering the kit, when you are entering the program in a kit, you are writing the address of that memory location. Clear? Are you clear? So this is so you are entering the again I am repeating, when you are entering the kit, suppose this is memory location 2000. So you are going to memory, you want to jump to memory location 2008. So in paper you will be writing jump. I have given the name. I given a name to the memory location 2008, that is back. Okay, so jump back means you want to go to memory location jump 2008, because back indicates the 2008. So in paper, when you will be writing the program in paper, you will be giving a name to the memory location, but when you are entering the program in a kit, okay, or in a compiler, whatever you will be doing, okay, while you are entering the program, you will be entering not back, you will be entering the address, that is 2008. Are you clear? So now the program is being executed. Okay, so after executing, after the program has reached here, okay, it will say jump back. So it will go back. It will go back to this memory location. Okay, so again this will execute these instructions. Whatever instructions you write in this section, it will execute. It will go on executing these instructions, and then again it will reach here, jump back. Again it will go back. Okay, again it will go back. So again after executing these instructions, again it will come here. Again it will go back. So this is how it becomes a loop. But the problem is it will become an infinite loop. Why this is an infinite loop? Because you have not put any condition. Whenever it will hit the instruction jump back, okay, it will go back, okay, so it will never come out of this, okay, it can never come out of this. So this is an infinite loop. So are infinite loops useful? Yes, not every day, but yes. Simplest example is a digital watch. You can do a mini project, okay, very simple. Once you start learning programming, you can do a mini project on this. What do you need? Only 3 registers: an hours counter, a minutes counter, and a seconds counter. Okay, initialize all the 3 registers with 0. Okay, start incrementing the seconds counter. When it reaches 60, make it 0. Okay, increment the minute counter. When it reaches 60, make it 0. Increments the hours counter. When it reaches 24. Okay, make everything 0. So a day is over. Okay, now will the next day be any bigger? No. Okay, it is the same. Okay, so all you need to what you need to do is put this procedure in a loop. Okay, so this loop will work forever until there is a power supply. So this is an infinite loop. Okay, so you can try this example after you learn programming. Okay, so how to create infinite loop? By putting a unconditional jump. It is as simple as that, right? If you put an unconditional jump, it will become an infinite loop. Okay, I will explain you here. Are you clear? Now infinite loops are equally simple. Okay, so look here. Now if we are going to learn finite loops means they are going to be n number of iterations. Suppose you want to run this loop. Okay, you want to run this loop 5 times. Okay, you want to run this loop 5 times. Okay, now in C programming, you create a for loop. Remember, you create a for loop. Okay, now you keep a counter in a variable I. Okay, I for iterations. You keep counting inside the variable I, right? So here instead of variables, you will be using what? Registers. Okay, you will be using registers. Same idea, but here it is very simple compared to C. I want to run this loop 5 times. Okay, I want to run this loop 5 times. So I will initialize some register with count 5, right? And go on decrementing the counter, okay, till it becomes 0. Okay, so simple. So put this count. I want to run this loop 5 times. Okay, so I'll put this count 5 in some register. Okay, in some register. For this you use which instruction to put any data in any register? MVI, right? So now tell me which register you will use to hold the counter. There are 7 registers: A, B, C, D, E, H and L. Okay, you can use any register. Okay, get it clear, you can use any register for setting the counter. But remember, never use A for unnecessary things, because A is the most important register in 8085. Your add, subtract, and, or, XOR, rotate instructions, etc. they all work on A register. So if you use it for holding the count, how will you do anything inside the loop? Okay, are you understanding my point? So don't use A unnecessarily. If it is your strongest programming tool. So here in the example, I am using register B, that is MVI B, 5H 05H. So I've initialized the counter. Okay, so so now I will go on doing the loop again and again. Okay, I'll be doing the loop again and again. So till the counter B becomes 0. So in every iteration, I will decrement the register B. See, I have written DEC B. Okay, so one iteration is over. Okay, B becomes 4. Okay, now I have to put a conditional jump over here. Okay, conditional jump over here. Why conditional jump? Why conditional jump? Because I want to create a finite loop. Okay, I want to create a finite loop over here. Now, because I have put because if I put jump, it will become infinite loop. So I have to put a conditional jump over here. So jump if not 0. So if the count has not become 0, it will jump to back. Okay. So first iteration. So it is executed. So I have initialized the counter with 5. Then I have executing the program. Okay. When it comes to DEC 5, after the first iteration, when it comes to DEC 5, B will become 4. Okay, jump is not 0. So the count is not 0. So it will jump to back. Okay. So again it is execute. The program is being executed. So after the second iteration, the count has become 3. When it hits the instruction DEC B, in the second iteration, B becomes 3. Okay. So again jump if not 0. The count has not become 0. So it will go to back. Okay. Again it will execute the instructions. So after the third iteration, when it hits the instruction DEC B, B will become 2. Okay. Again the count has not become 0. Again it will go back. Okay. Again after the fourth iteration, B has become 1 when it hits the instruction DEC B. Again the counter has not become 0. Okay. So it will go back, and after the fifth iteration, it will be 0. Clear? So are you getting the clear? Are you getting it clear? So how many iterations I have used? How many iterations I have used? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Do it by yourself. Whenever I am explaining any example, do it by yourself. Okay. Don't just watch. Do it by yourself. Okay. Then only you will understand. Okay. Okay. Now here I have written jump if not 0. Okay. That means condition is not satisfied. So will it jump? Only if jump is not 0. Only if the 0 flag is not 0. That is, if the 0 flag is 0, then only it will jump. Okay. But here, when it has got when the register will be, the count register is 0 0. Okay. 0 flag will become 1. So the condition becomes false. Okay. So then by default program comes to the, so when this instruction becomes false, the program will go to the next memory location. Okay. That is, it will come out of this loop. It will come out of this loop. Okay. It will be executing the next memory location. It will not go back. Okay. It will not go back. It will come out of the loop and it will be executing the next memory loop, the instruction stored in the next memory location. Okay. So that is, after it completes 5 iterations, okay, it will come out of the loop and it will go ahead. Okay. So this is how we make a loop. Okay. Is not it simple? Okay. Now few simple things to remember. Okay. I have given here the counter 5. Okay. So I have given here the counter 5. So how many iterations? How many iterations are we going to get? 5 iterations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, I have written. Okay. Not 4, not 6. Okay. There are 5 iterations. This loop will go on 5 times. So if you are going to add 100 numbers, okay, I will be write a program to add one number, okay, put it in a loop, and with the count of 100, not 99 or 101, okay, I will be initializing a counter with 100, okay, and I will go on adding the numbers until the count reaches up to 100. So I can add 100 numbers by only adding. If I write a program in this section to add one number, and if I continue it in a loop 100 times, then the number gets added 100 times. Okay. So this is how the loop works. Okay. So if you have to transfer 20 numbers, right? I'll write a program in this section. Write a program to transfer one number. Okay, I'll put it in a loop. Okay, with a count of 20 instead of 5. I'll write a count of 20. Okay, so and so on. Okay, I will run the loop 20 times. Okay, then I can transfer a whole block of 20 numbers. I will write a program to transfer a I will transfer a number in a single number. Okay, I will put in a loop of I make a count of 20. I run the loop 20 times. Okay, then in this way I can transfer 20 numbers. Okay, so did you understand this? So now one more example I have created. One more example so that it becomes more and more clear. So here same I have initialized. I will write here MBI C comma 08. Okay, MBI C comma 08. Then I will write here DECB DECC sorry JNZ back JNZ back. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to run this loop. I want to run this loop 8 times. So I have initialized the counter C 8 times. Okay, exactly. So here will be 8 iterations. Okay, and after the complete C here MBI C 08. So after then it will come to this. Then it will execute this this section. Okay. Then when it comes to instruction DECC, the counter which was initialized with C, okay, it will be 07. Okay, again it will go back because the counter is not become 0, and then it will go back. Okay, it will run this section. Okay, and when it will come to DECC, again C will be decremented to 6. Again it will go back. Again C will be decremented to 5. Again it will go back. C will be decremented to 4. Again it will go back. C will be decremented to 3. Again it will go back. C will be decremented to 2. Again it will go back. C will be decremented to 1. Again it will go back. C will be decremented to 0. Now once the count becomes 0, okay, so then the condition becomes false and the program counts out of the loop and will execute the next instruction stored at this memory location. Is it clear? Okay, so this is you are getting this concept new. So doubts will not come to your mind. Okay, if you understand this point, if you understand this programs clearly. But when you totally go through it, okay, that is after seeing three times, okay, you will have the doubt. I will tell you what the doubt is. In first example, I have put the counter in register B. Okay, in second example, I have put the counter in register C. Okay, I have written what? J and Z. Now, suppose now you are now you are supposing that what is J and Z? J and Z means jump if not 0. Okay. Now, but you don't understand whom to check. The microprocessor. Now, suppose you are microprocessor. Okay. You don't know whom to check. Here the count is in register B. Here the count is in register C. Okay. So, did you understand the question? How does the microprocessor, how does the JNZ know that which counter, which register it needs to check? Now the microprocessor cannot go back. Okay, the microprocessor cannot go back. Okay, and track a program. Remember this very important point. The microprocessor is the answer is the microprocessor is neither going to check register B nor it is going to check register C. Jump if not 0 only checks the 0 flag. Jump if not 0 only checks the 0 flag. Okay, do you understand my point? A conditional jump never checks a user register. Understood? It checks the flag register. Okay, that is why all conditional jumps, that is jump if carry, jump if no carry, jump if 0, jump if no 0, jump if parity even, jump if parity odd, jump if plus, jump if minus, these all conditional jump instructions works on flags. Okay, checks the flags. So what is the advantage? The advantage is it gives you the flexibility to keep the count in any register. Okay, no matter what register you decrement, the flag register is affected. Okay, so J and Z check the flag register. Neither it checks the B register nor it checks the C register. Remember this point. Okay, the conditional jump instructions always checks the flag register. Okay. Now you understand why I am stressing this point again and again. Now see here, is DECB necessary here? Of course, this is how counter is decremented. Okay, you write it inside the loop or outside the loop? Of course, inside the loop. Okay, because it has to be decremented in every iteration, right? So you have to write this decrement instruction inside the loop. But when you say inside the loop, it means this whole span. Okay, this whole span. Okay, that is this much size, this much space inside the loop. So is decrement the count at the end necessary, or you can write it anywhere inside the span? Okay, did you understand my point? Did you understand my question? Do you have to write the instruction at the end, or you can write it anywhere in the instruction anywhere in the span inside the loop? Okay, the answer is it has to be written at the end of the loop. Okay, because did you understand this? Because if you write this DECB in the middle of the loop, okay, what will happen? B will be decremented. Okay, because if you write a DECB inside in between the loop, B will be decremented. Your zero flag will also become 0, but suppose you write your DECB here. Okay, your condition is here. Okay, so between here to here, suppose you are writing your DECB here. Okay, but really you are writing your DECB here. So from here to here, from the DC and to jump, there will be, if there is any arithmetic and logical operation, okay, flags will again get affected. Okay, flags will again get affected. Okay, because I think you remember flags change after every operation. So flags only give you the status of the current result. The status of the current result. Do you understand this? So if you write DECB in the middle, B will be decremented. Zero flag will also become 0. Okay, but after that several instructions, several operations will happen. Okay, where flags can change. So then J and Z, okay, then J and Z will see the effect of DECB. It will see that J and Z will not see the effect of DECB. It will see the effect. It will give you the effect of some other instruction, and based on that, okay, the loop will have some random result. So the idea is in between the decrementing the count, in between decrementing and the count and J and Z, there should ideally be no instruction. Okay, ideally be no instruction at all. Don't put any instruction in between decrement the count and jump and the conditional jump. Okay, you can write any instruction which can if you want to write DECB in the middle, you can write, but in between this DECB and J and Z, there should not be any arithmetic or logical operation. Okay, so to avoid this mess, it is better that if you write this DECB at the end of the loop, that is in between DECB and the conditional jump, there should not be, ideally you should not put any other instruction. Okay, otherwise the loop will give you a random result. Okay, I hope it is clear, because the flags changes after every arithmetic and logical operation. Every arithmetic and logical operation will affect the flags. Okay, so this J and Z will check the flag. It will not check the register, particular register B or C. Okay, if you write in the middle, it will not go back and check the register B. Okay, it will give you the status of the flag depending on the current instruction. Okay, so if you write any instruction in between DECB and JNZ which will affect the zero flag, it will give you the result of that particular instruction. Okay, it will give you the result based on the status of the particular instruction which is written, which will affect it. Okay, I hope it is clear. Okay, so ideally you should not write any instruction between DECB and JNZ because the conditional jumps only checks the flag register. It does not check the user register. Okay, so remember this point. Between the counter decrement and the conditional jump, ideally you should not put any other, you should not write any other instruction. So I hope you have understood. So this is how loop works. Okay, now last time I'm just telling you. So now for the last time, so this is a loop. Okay, I want to run this, run it 9 times. Okay, so what I will do, initialize register. So I have used here D. Any register you can use, MVI D, 09H. Okay, put a so then decrement B, decrement the counter register D. It will run the it will run these instructions. Then it will decrement the D, DECD. Okay, then jump if not 0, I put a level back. It will go back. Okay, so jump until the becomes 0. So this is how you make a loop, and this loop will do exactly 9 iterations. Okay. Now again, if I give you a counter, so if I give you a counter of 5, you get 5 iterations. If I give you a counter 9, you get 9 iterations, and so on. So B is a 8-bit register, right? So B is a 8-bit register. A 8-bit register can have a maximum value of FF, right? A 8-bit register can have a maximum value of FF. FF means 255, right? So if you give a counter FF, which is the biggest counter you can give, because B is a 8-bit register. Okay, B is a 8-bit register, the biggest counter you can set is FF. Okay, so you get 255 iterations. For FF, how many iterations you will get? If you set the counter to FF, you will get 255 iterations, which is the maximum number of iterations. Now, what is the maximum number of iterations you can create using 8-bit register? You say, ma'am, 255 iterations. Okay, by giving a counter of FF. Okay, now I say produce 256 iterations using a 8-bit register. Okay, so here what you have to do? If I say using a 8-bit register produce 256 iterations, what you have to do? You have to write MBI D, 00H. Okay, then you have to write DECD, then JNZ back. Okay, JNZ back. So with a counter of 00H, okay, the how many iterations it will run? It is not possible to run any iteration with a counter of 00. Okay, but still if you initialize MVI a count register with the count of 00, still this, after this you write this instruction, program counter will be implemented to this location and this segment will be executed, and then it will hit the instruction DECD. After it hits the instruction DECD, this 00 will be decremented and it will go to -1. Okay, and it will go to -1. So -1 means FF. If you write DECD, okay, 0 will be, understand very clearly. If you write DECD, 0 will be decremented to -1. Okay, this segment will be executed. Despite if you write 00H, this segment will be executed. Okay, one time. Okay, and then it will hit DECD. Then 00 will become -1. So it will be FF. -1 means FF. Then jump if not 0. So it will check the 0 flag. Is 0 flag set? No. 0 flag is 0 because B is D is FF. So it will go back. Now your D is FF. So this loop will run how many times? 255 times. Okay. So this loop will run 255 times. Okay. So but before running D became FF, it executed the program was executed one time. So 255 plus 1, that is 256 iterations. Okay. So whenever if I tell that it is maximum asked in GATE questions, it will not come in normal examinations. Only this type of question only comes in GATE examinations. That if you want to run a loop 256 times with the 8-bit register, how it is possible? The answer is very simple. If you initialize a count with a 0, okay, if you initialize a count with a 0, then you have to initialize the count with a 0, then only the loop will be executed 256 times, because one time it will be executed as a single instruction, as a single program. Then when it is the instruction DECD, this 00, the count which you have initialized is 00, it will become -1. That is, your register will be loaded with FF. Okay, this is D will be loaded with FF, and it will be running this. After it becomes FF, that is 255. You will get 255 iterations. Okay, and one iteration is already over. Okay, before it became 255, one iteration was already done. So total it becomes 256 iterations. So with the 8-bit register, if you want to create 256 iterations, you have to initialize the count with a 00. Okay, remember this type of questions are asked during GATE examinations. During normal examinations, you will not get this type of questions. If you want to appear for GATE, you have to remember these questions. Okay. Okay, now students, this is the biggest instruction, that is the call. Okay, so listen very carefully. Okay, if you have any doubts, you can ask during the class sessions. So listen very carefully. I will try to make you understand. I will try my best to make you understand the call instruction details. Okay, so this is the biggest instruction. Now you see jump. How does this function? You come, you are going, this is a program, you are performing this program, the program is executed, suddenly you find jump, you go to that particular location. Okay, suppose jump 1000 or 4000. Okay, you go to location 4000 and then you continue the next instruction. Okay, this is jump. Now call. Okay, how does a call function? Suppose you are executing a program. Okay, you are finding call 2000. Okay, so after you find call 2000, after you find this instruction call 2000, you go to a particular memory location 2000 where you have written a function. Okay, where you return a function. Now functions are so called subroutines. In HTML language, they are called subroutines. Okay, but actually it is a function. But basically it is a function. So you call the subroutine. There is some subroutine written over. You have written some function over here. That is, you have written some subroutines over here. So you call the subroutine. Execute the subroutine. Okay, and then you find the next instruction after the subroutine, that is return. Only return, no address. Okay, only return. The instruction is there is a call 2000. You are placing an address, but in return you are not placing. You don't place any address. So you find the instruction return at the end of the subroutine. Okay, and then after you find the instruction return, it goes to the next memory. It returns to the next memory location as a next instruction. Okay, not the same instruction from where it found the call, because if you return to the same instruction, you will again go to the same subroutine and it will become an infinite loop. Okay, so After it finds the return instruction, it goes to the next instruction. Okay, so this is the instruction call. Okay, this is call, this is call, okay, and this is return. After you find return, you again return to the main program to the next instruction. Fine. Now you are executing a program. Okay, after at memory location 1000, you found the instruction call 2000H. Okay, so this is your call instruction. This call will take you to a memory location 2000H, where you have written the subroutine. Okay, then what the processor will do, it will execute the subroutine. Okay, and at the end of the subroutine, it will find the return instruction, and when it finds the return instruction, it will go back to the main program. Okay, so you learn these two instructions, call and return. Okay, together they are basically two separate instructions, but you learn them together. They basically complement each other. Okay, so you learn them together. So what is the difference between jump and call? When you're in jump, you go and continue. You go to a particular memory location. Okay, suppose you find your jump 4000H. If you will go to memory location 4000H and you will continue. Okay, but in call, if you write in a call, you go, you execute something, okay, and then you return. Fine. So you write call 2000H. What is 2000H? The address of the subroutine. Okay, so you can even give a name to the subroutine, just like you have given name in jump, but then the assembler will give you the address. Okay, so call 2000, processor will go to address 2000. Okay, so this is the subroutine. On return, the program will come back to the next instruction. Okay, so now we'll understand how this functions, how this call instruction functions. Now call 2000H, this is a 3-byte instruction, right? So can you see that? You can see that, right? It's a 3-byte instruction. So how this will get stored? Now this will get stored in 3 locations, because this, one memory location has 1 byte. So this is a 3-byte instruction. So this will get stored in 3 memory locations. Okay. So this is how instruction will appear in the memory. In 1000, the opcode for call will get stored. Okay, in 1001, 008 will get stored. In 1002, your 28 will get stored. So this is how the instruction will appear in the memory. Okay. Now, when you write call 2000, okay, program will come up to here, right? Call 2000, program will come up to here, because in this way the whole instruction will get stored in the memory. So the program will come up to here. Okay, it will fetch the whole instruction. The processor will fetch the whole instruction, and then where it will go? It will go to memory location. After fetching the whole instruction, it will go to memory location 2000H. Okay, execute the whole instruction, execute the subroutine. Okay, in 2000H you return the subroutine, and then it will find the return, and then it will come back to memory location 1003, because up to here the call instruction has occupied the memory locations. Okay, so after return, it will go back to the memory location 1003. So are you clear up to this? So up to this, what is done? The instruction is fetched. Okay, microprocessor will fetch call. PC will become, when the call is fetched, what the PC will be PC plus 1, that is 1001. Okay, and after this is fetched and decode, the processor will understand this here, two more bytes is the 3-byte instruction, so 2 more bytes are remaining. Okay, so then it will understand, so then it will fetch 00. Okay, and after it fetch 00, it will hold this 00 in Z register, and then again PC will be incremented to 1002, and 28 will be fetched and put in, and will be put in W register. Okay, So what is over up to here? Fetching is done, right? Fetching is done. What is yet to be done? Execution. Okay. So between fetching and decoding, fetching, decoding and execution, between fetching and execution, okay, what is the status between fetching and execution? PC is 1003 and WZ is 2000H. Okay, so to go to memory location 2000H, PC has to be 2000H, right? PC should be loaded with 2000H, right? PC should be loaded with 2000H. So just like the jump instruction, after this instruction call 2000, after execution call 2000H, after the processor executes this call 2000H instruction, PC will get the value 2000 from WZ register. This is the same as your jump instruction. Up to here, it is the function is same as your jump instruction. So, now in call, you have to come back. Okay. So how do you come back? After it executes the subroutine, it finds the return instruction and it will come back. So how do you come back? By return instruction. By this return instruction, you will be coming back to the main program. Okay. So when you write return, what are you not writing? What are you not writing? The address next to it. Okay, the address where you want to return. You are not writing the address. You are not writing return 1003. Okay. So you are not writing the return address, right? So when you write call, you write call 2000H. You know where you have to go, right? Even in jump, you write the address next to it. But in return, you are just telling go back. You are telling the processor to go back. You are telling the processor is telling the program to go back. But you are not writing the address where to go back. So, does the microprocessor needs the address? Does the microprocessor needs the return address? That is 1003. Of course, the PC has to get the value of returning. Okay, that is PC has to get the address 1003, which will be called return address. RA means return address. Okay, so to go to subroutine, PC needs the subroutine address. To go back, PC needs the return address. To go to the subroutine, PC needs the subroutine address. Okay, and to go back, PC needs the return address. Now, you cannot write return 1003. You cannot write return 1003 because this is a subroutine. Okay, a subroutine is a function. So why do we write functions? So that they can be called from several places. Wherever you call the function, whenever you call the function from, wherever you call the function from, the subroutine address has to be the same, right? You go to the same function, but you will not return to the same place. You will not return to the same place. The subroutine function will remain the subroutine address will remain the same, but you cannot return to the same address. The return address has to be different. Okay, return address has to depend upon where the function was called from. Okay, return address has to depend upon where the function was called from. Inside the function, you cannot write the return address. Is this point clear? Just remember in C function, in the bracket you don't write the return address. Okay, because return address has to depend upon where the function was called from. Inside the function, you cannot write the return address. Is this point clear? Now, so where the processor gets 1003 from? Where the processor gets 1003 from then? Did the processor now just remember that when fetching was over, PC was 1003. When fetching before execution of the call instruction, PC was 1003. After execution, the PC was loaded with 2000 after execution, but before execution PC, between fetching and execution, PC was 1003. You remember that point? Now that by that fetching and decoding was over, processor knows. Understand these points very clearly. Listen very clearly. By that fetching and decoding was over, processor knows that before execution, processor already knows that this is a call instruction, so it has to go and it has to come back. The processor knows it has to go to subroutine, execute the subroutine, and again it has to come back. Okay, so that means it knows that the processor will need this return address, okay, while coming back. Fine. So the processor is created in such a smart way that before loading PC by 2008 and losing address 1003, okay, before, listen very carefully, before loading 2008 into PC and before putting 2008 into PC and before losing 1003, processor has pushed PC into stack. Okay, processor has pushed PC into stack. Should I repeat? You cannot write return 1003. That is clear. Now you remember PC was 1003 after when the call instruction was fetched, not executed. When the call instruction was fetched and decoded, PC was 1003. After execution, PC was loaded with 2003. Now between that PC, now the processor is made in such a smart way that the processor, after fetching, processor knows that this is a call instruction. So it has to go to a subroutine, execute the subroutine, and then again it has to return back. So it needs the return address, right? So it is made in such a smart way that before fetching and execution, okay, before loading the data 2008 and before losing the data 1008, what it has done, it has pushed this 1000, the program counter address into stack. Understood? Means it stored the return address which was in PC to a safe place called stack. So processor will push. So processor will push the return address into stack. Understood? So now this is, suppose this is your stack. This is your return address. Now that goes to the top of the stack. By doing this, the return address goes to the top of the stack. So by doing this, so after storing the return address into stack, into a safe place stack, now the program counter is free. So after execution, the program counter was loaded with 2008, right? But before that, it has stored the return address in stack. Okay, so now PC can easily go to subroutine 2008. It does not have to worry about the return address because it has already stored the return address into stack. Okay, so the call instruction is over. It has gone to memory location 2008. Okay. Okay. So jump 2000 will take you to memory location 2000, right? Call 2000 will also take you to memory location 2000. So what is the difference? Call sees that you are able to come back, okay, to the main program. How? By pushing the address into stack. By pushing the program counter address into stack. Okay? Before executing. Okay? So processor will execute the whole subroutine. When it comes back, it goes to memory location, suppose 2000. Then it executes the subroutine. Okay? And then it comes to return. When it comes to return, it knows it has to go back. Where to go? It has to get the return address. Right? It has to get the return address. That is, PC should be loaded with the return address. Fine? So, it will do the reverse operation. What is the reverse operation? It will fork PC. Okay. What is fork PC?
pop PC means to fetch the address back from the stack. The address which was stored in memory location in stack, that is 1003 in our example, okay, it will pop back this memory location which was stored in stack into PC, right? So PC will again be loaded with 1003, and then and in this way the program will get the return address and it will get back to the next instruction, that is 1003 in our, the 1003 was there in our example, right? So it will get back this return address from the stack and by instruction pop PC, and then it will return to memory location 1003 in the main program. Fine? Okay. So let us take another example so that it becomes more and more clear to you. Okay? So this is a program, okay, at memory location 6000. I have written the instruction called 9000. Okay? So this is your address. Call 9000 means at memory location 9000 you have written a subroutine which you want to execute. So you write call 9000. Okay? So and 6x memory location processor will fetch, what will processor first do? Processor will fetch and decode the instruction call, right? And it will fetch 00 and it will fetch 90. 00 after fetching it will store in Z register, and 90 after fetching it will get stored in W register, right? Now processor knows it has to go to 9000, so it places 9000 into PC, right? 9000 into PC from WZ register. But before the processor places 9000H into PC, what does it do? It, which is the return address, 6003 is the return address, right? It has to return back to this address. Okay, so before placing the WZ, that is WZ content into PC, what it will do? It will push PC to stack. Okay, it will push the PC, that is the program counter. Before executing, the program counter is at 6003. Okay, so it will push the PC into stack, that is at stack if the 6003 return address will get stored. Okay, at 6003 the return address will get stored into stack. Then this instruction will be executed, and after execution PC will be loaded with 9000 from WZ register. Okay, after PC gets loaded into 9000, it goes to memory location 9000. Okay, then PC will execute the subroutine. After executing the subroutine, it will find the return. It wants to, and when it finds the return, it wants the return address. So it will pop PC from stack. Okay, what was stored in stack? 6003. So PC will be loaded with 6003. That is the return address. So PC will get the return address and will come to the memory location 6003, and then it will continue the program execution. Okay, so I think it is clear. Okay. Now the question that comes to your mind will be, why we have to push the PC only in stack? Okay, why not any other register? Okay, this is because of this. What is this? This is called nested subroutine. Okay, nested subroutine. From one subroutine, okay, you call another subroutine. Okay, so and then another. Okay, see, from one subroutine I am calling another subroutine. See, okay, so that is this is called nesting. Okay, that means one within the other. So these are the call instructions. Okay, I have marked this as 1, 2, 3, 4 calls. Similarly, there are 4 returns. Okay, so when we will call the first subroutine, we will store the return as the processor stores the return address into the stack. Okay, suppose the return address is R1. Okay, fine. Then what happens? The processor stores the return address into stack. Again, it gets another call, right? how the processor stores the return address into the stack? By push PC. Okay, that is the return address gets stored in the stack. Then after that it gets another call. Okay, so it is to store the return address of the return address 2. I marked the second return address I have marked as R2. Okay, so similarly it will push the R2 into the stack. Again it got another call, so it will again push the return address 3 into stack. Again it has got another push and another call, so again it will store the return address R4 into the stack. In this way the return address R gets stored in the stack. Okay, now while coming back all the 4 returns are going to do a pop. All these 4 returns will need a pop to get back the return address, right? That means we have stored them in the order R1, R2, R3 and R4, right? In the stack we want them in the order R4, R3, R2, R1, right? We have stored them in the form R1, R2, R3, R4. While returning, you want them in the order, the reverse order, R4, R3, R2, R1. Fine? So that is why we have stored the return address into stack. Why? Because stack works on the principle of last in, first out. Okay? Wherever you store, you get it back in the reverse order. Fine? Have you understood? While storing, we have stored in the form of R1, R2, R3, R4 in the stack. Okay? While returning, you need a pop. In which order you want the return address? R4, R3, R2, R1. R4, R3, R2, R1. You want them in this order. Okay? That is why we need stack, because stack works on the principle of last in, first out. That means it works in the reverse order. So I hope you understood this. So now for the last time, let's see the steps that happens during call. Why I am stressing so much time on call, you should understand, because this is the biggest instruction in 8085. Okay, so I want that you should understand the instruction very clearly. Okay, so for the last time, let's see the steps that happen during call. These steps will also help you to draw the timing diagram. Okay, so during call, what happens? The first step that takes place is push PC. Okay, so this is our program counter. This is the higher byte. This is the lower byte. Okay, of PC program counter, and this is our stack. This is the top of stack. So when you write push PC to stack, what will happen? The stack pointer will be decremented by 1. That is, SP will become SP minus 1. Okay, and PCH will get stored in the new location pointed by SP into the program count. The program counter high will get the higher byte of program counter will get stored in SP minus 1. That is the new address pointed by SP. Okay, I have written here SP. That means this is SP minus 1. That is the new address pointed by SP. Fine. So PC will put the value PCH, the higher byte and higher address, lower byte lower address. Okay, remember this principle all the time. In all the processors, whether it's 8085, 8086 or Pentium, any processor you take of Intel, okay, all the processors works in the same principle. Higher byte higher address, lower byte lower address. So PC will put the value PCH in the SP minus 1. That is that is the new location pointed by SP. Okay, so this is the first step. Again SP will become after it puts the higher byte program counter into SP minus 1. Again SP will become SP minus 1, which is effectively SP minus 2. SP minus 1, that is effectively it is SP minus 2, right? So the lower byte of program counter will get stored in the SP minus 2. Okay, so SP becomes SP minus 1 will become SP minus 1, that is effectively SP minus 2. So at new location pointed by SP now, okay, this new location pointed by SP now, okay, it will the program counter will put the lower byte, okay, into the new location pointed by SP. Fine? Understood? Understood? First it will put the higher byte into SP minus 1, then it will put the lower byte in SP minus 2. Higher byte, higher address, lower byte, lower address. Into by when you write push PC, this will happen. Okay? Then in the second step, what happens? In the second step, simply the PC will simply put the number from WZ. Okay, whatever return address was, suppose you have written call 9000. Okay, so this is the subroutine address. So this was when this instruction was fetched, the lower byte and the higher byte was stored in WZ register temporarily. So in the second step, in the first step, what we have done, push PC, okay, into stack. That is, we have stored the return address into stack. If the return address is 1003, so in SP minus 1, what is stored? 10. In SP minus 2, what is stored? 103. Fine. Secondly, in the second step, what we will do? This is during call. What we will do? This is after execution. What will happen? PC has become free because PC has stored the return address into stack. So PC is now free. Then PC will simply get the number from WZ. The subroutine address it will get from WZ. The WZ was temporarily holding the subroutine address. So this subroutine address will be placed in program counter in the second step. So this is the whole execution of your call instruction. I hope you understood. Okay, now during return, what happens? The moment processor fetches the return instruction, it knows it has to go back. Okay, why it get the return address from? From the stack. Okay, so there is only one operation performed here during return, that is pop PC from stack. Okay, so this is your stack. Okay, the number was stored, the number which I have taken for example 1003, this is stored in the stack in this way. Okay, now it will work in the reverse order. So say 1003 has to be popped out into PC. This is your PC. So 1003 has to be popped out into PC. So it will be the way it was pushed, it will be popped out in the reverse order. So first this is indicating your top of stack. So first what will happen? 03, the lower byte, okay, will be popped into the program counter low. There's a lower byte address into the lower byte, the lower byte data into the lower byte address. Fine. Then PC will be incremented by SP will be incremented by 1. Then 10 will be fetched and it will be put into the higher byte of the program counter. Right? The higher byte into the higher byte address. So 1003 has been popped out into the program counter. So again SP will be incremented and it will be some random data that was stored. Okay. So first PCL will get the data pointed by SP. Fine. Then then SP will be incremented by 1. Okay. That is SP becomes SP plus 1. Okay. Then PCH will get the new data. Will get the data pointed by the new value. Will get the data by the new value pointed by SP. That is SP means SP, the address pointed by SP plus 1. Fine. So I hope you understood. First PCL will get the data pointed by SP. Then SP will be incremented by 1. So SP gets a new address. So this the program counter high will get the data pointed by the new pointed by SP into pointed by SP. That is this SP means the address which was incremented by 1. Understood? I hope it is understood. So you learned push and pop. Okay. You learned call and return. So a call does a push, a return does a pop. So I hope you got clear. again I am telling this SP is nothing but SP plus 1. Okay, SP plus 1 is indicating a new address. So this new address is pointed by SP. So this the data that is stored at the new address, that is SP plus 1, that is 10, we get stored in the program counter high. So I hope this is understood. Okay. Okay. Now call 2008 is a 3-byte instruction. Okay. Call 2008 is a 3-byte instruction. 1 byte for the opcode, 1 byte for the higher byte, 1 byte for the lower byte. Fine. So now every time you need a call to you need to call a subroutine, you need to use 3-byte instructions. Okay. Every time you need to call a subroutine, you need a 3-byte instructions. Now there are some functions which are to be called all the time. Okay. For example, in a remote control, which buttons you use very regularly? The volume buttons, the buttons by which you change the channels. So like this, this is an example. For example, this is an example. So in every system there are some processors. So there are some functions in every system which are to be called every time, which are most frequently used. So call instructions takes 3 bytes. So why? So the manufacturers have the processors have designed faster calls for them. Okay. So there is a faster call instruction called RSTN. This works much faster than call. How I will be telling you now. Here n can be any number from 0 to 7. Okay, n can be any number from 0 to 7. Okay, RST stands for restart. Okay, RST stands for restart. It is a software interrupt. So if you write RSTN, it means call n into 8. Okay, call n into 8. So if you write RST0, it means call 00008. If you write RST1, it means 00008H. Call 00008H. These are address. Okay, these are the subroutine address. Fine. If you write RST2, it means call 0010. How 0010? You see there is a gap of 8. Okay, that means after 8 there should be a gap of 8. 8 then means 9, A, B, C, D, E, F and 10. So this is a gap of 8. Likewise, RST3 call 0018H, RST4 call 0028H, RST5 call 0028H, RST6 call 0030, RST7 call 0038H. Okay. So these are the 8 RST instructions. Okay. So now you say, why not call 00? Why can't we write call 0000H? Why should I write RST0H? This answer is call 0000H is a 3-byte instruction and RST0, this is a 1-byte instruction. Okay, so it does the job much faster. So you have a subroutine at 1000H. Okay, so there are two options to call the subroutine. How? Either you can use call 00H or you can directly use RST0. Okay, but RST0 is the faster one. So, but it will not work for every location. Okay, this RST instructions doesn't work for every location. It works only for these stipulated locations. Okay, so if you want to call a function regularly, okay, so you can write the functions or the subroutines at this particular memory locations, so that you can use this faster call instructions instead of writing call. Okay, so if you want to call any function or subroutine which has to be called regularly, you can use this particular memory locations. Okay, instead of call you can write RST. Okay, if you write RST0, it means call 0000H. But this instructions, RST instructions will work only for this memory location 0000, 0008, 0010, 0018, 0020, 0028, 0030, 0038. Okay, it will work only for these 8 memory locations. So if you write a subroutine in these memory locations, instead of call you can write RST0 or to 7. I hope this is clear. So these are all your branch control instructions. So I hope the instructions are very clear to you. If there is any doubt, you can ask me during the class sessions. Do watch the video very carefully. Okay, note down all the points. Okay, and so hope you do well, and goodbye.